It seems like almost every year there is a new film version of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And since this story is named after a type of music, it only makes sense that these new films bring with them a chorus of disparaging comments echoing through the cold, dark air. Some are in good fun, others are not. But this is just people upset about Hollywood's incessant remakes, right? Except this argument also shows up in the theatrical world. Trinity Rep in Providence, Rhode Island has been performing this show every year for 40 years, and they always rewrite the script. But the last few years, they've made some more creative casting decisions, and that's left some people bah-humbugging this play like it's leading to the downfall of modern civilization. And this is the stage. The story is supposed to be different every time. There's as many Scrooges as there are actors to play him, right? Part of me understands this frustration. Christmas is full of tradition. People want to experience things the way they remember them being when they were kids. But whether it be on stage or screen, all these people calling for a return to the original Christmas Carol do realize it's a novel, right? You want an original Christmas Carol, you have to read a book. But I don't blame them if they don't know that Scrooge, Marley, the ghosts, and Tiny Tim started off in the pages of a book. After all, they have been portrayed on stage and screen more than almost any other fictional characters. They're staples of our culture. People who can't say Charles Dickens without giggling, let alone read his books, still know who they are. But why? Lots of novels get adapted and readapted, but none of them come close to the numbers A Christmas Carol is putting up. And that trend isn't slowing down anytime soon. So why this story? Well, to answer that, we'll have to talk about Christmas carols present, past, and yet to come, and talk about what almost all of them get wrong about their source material. Writing in the New York Times, Brian Rogers called Dickens the man who invented Christmas. And that reputation comes in part because Dickens wrote a number of Christmas stories. So why is it that his carol has become the evergreen of Christmas adaptations? Well, in 1849, Dickens was too busy to write another Christmas story. Instead, he gave a public reading of his Christmas Carol at the Birmingham Town Hall. The 3-hour reading was attended by 2,000 people. Dickens, who originally, and this is important, planned to be an actor, not a writer, had so much fun in performing the piece, and his audience had so much fun watching him perform it, that it launched a new tradition. Dickens went on tour and continued to give public readings of A Christmas Carol the rest of his life, 127 times in total. So while many famous novels get adapted for the stage, there probably hasn't been a more oratory-charged story since ancient times. In fact, many stage adaptations of A Christmas Carol include Dickens as a character on stage. Okay, but what about film? One mustachioed man enthusiastically reading his book for 3 hours doesn't exactly chart an obvious path to Muppets and Bill Murray. Well, the fact is, Dickens is both the father of Christmas and the great-grandfather of American cinema. In his essay on film form, Sergei Eisenstein argues that from Dickens, from the Victorian novel, stem the first shoots of American film aesthetic. He goes on to explain how Dickens wrote in a montage of images that grew into the core principles of cinematography. So most of Dickens' stories naturally lend themselves to film. But that's not to say there isn't stuff lost in adaptation. Very few versions of A Christmas Carol include Scrooge visiting the miners or the lighthouse keeper, or the scene after Marley's ghost shows up where the air was filled with phantoms, and we get this phantom that Scrooge knew when he was alive. One old ghost in a white waistcoat with a monstrous iron safe attached to its ankle, who cried piteously at being unable to assist a wretched woman with an infant whom it saw below upon a doorstep. The misery with them all was, clearly, that they sought to interfere for good in human matters and had lost the power forever. Or the scene at the very end of The Ghost of Christmas Present, where two starving children, described as lurking devils, crawl from under the robes of Christmas Present, and Scrooge, appalled, says, "Spirit, are they yours?" "They are man's," said the spirit, looking down upon them, "and they cling to me, appealing from their fathers. This boy is ignorance, this girl is want. Beware them both, and all their degree." "Have they no refuge or resource?" cried Scrooge. "Are there no prisons?" said the spirit, turning on him for the last time with his own words. "Are there no workhouses?" The bell struck 12. These are some of the most powerful scenes in the original novel, and some do make it into films and the stage, but it's scenes like these that led Broadview to make this the cover of their scholarly edition. This is at the core of A Christmas Carol. So if you don't have that, if you don't cover the entire story, does that mean all these adaptations are just cash grabs? Well, of course they are. A Christmas Carol is popular and theaters are really hard to keep open. So people perform A Christmas Carol because people want to see it and they'll pay money to see it. So in a sense, yes, it is to raise revenue. And with films, of course, all filmmakers strive to make money, even if it's not their main goal. If they don't make money, I don't think they let you continue making films for very long. But that motivation is not out of line with the original story, which itself was first written to relieve the Dickens household of the financial burden of raising a growing family. Yes, it's a story about Scrooge and how the power of Christmas can thaw even the most frigid heart. But if you read the original novella, it's just as much a story about the invisible cogs in the machinery of industry, which looks a lot different today than it did in Dickens' time. Today's Scrooge doesn't walk around with tallow candles because darkness is cheap. They sail gaudy Waterworld-style yachts while their delivery drivers piss in bottles so they can meet their quota. Tiny Tim doesn't live across town anymore. They're on the other side of the world, practically slaving over our sneakers and smartphones. And most of us don't even care because it's so easy not to think about them. And to Dickens, what I just said wouldn't be seen as hyperbolic social justice talking points. It'd be seen as real. When he was 12, his father was arrested and sent to debtor's prison. Young Charles had to sell his books and drop out of school to work in a shoe factory crawling with rodents. As a literary celebrity, Dickens fundraised for Manchester's working class. He visited Cornwall to personally inspect and then rally against children working in the mines. All of this makes its way into the fabric of A Christmas Carol. So to go back to Trinity Rep and the hate mob protesting their changes on social media, the truth is we need a retelling. That's why this story can, and maybe even should, be updated. A woman can play Scrooge. Today, screwing people over for money is no longer exclusively a male pastime. Tiny Tim can be played by a neurodivergent actor who probably understands the invisibility that Tiny Tim's world would have looked on him with better than anyone else. We, like Scrooge, need a good haunting, which in its original sense means to frequent or continually visit. And that's what the continual adaptations of A Christmas Carol do. They haunt us with the story that we need to hear. Thank you so much for watching. Happy reading. Check out the original novella and go watch your favorite adaptation or least favorite adaptation of this wonderful story. Merry Christmas.